Now, the new series of Love Island launches tonight, and we're joined by 2017 finalist Olivia Attwood. Behind the villa drama, fake lashes and fake tan, Olivia was living with a very real condition, ADHD. Well, Olivia joins us now to share her story. Hi, Olivia.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, ladies. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for joining us. Olivia, just help me out a little bit with the understanding of what ADHD is, because, you know, sometimes you get this very sort of, oh, it's people being hyperactive and you see the wee boys bouncing about, and that tends to be the sort of typical image that you get. It's much more complex than that, I know, but tell us, what actually is it, or what is it to you?
So I think, ADHD, you know, as a disorder, as a neurodiversity as it comes under, there are three major types. I myself fall into a kind of combined type. So like you just said there in the beginning, you know, you have the typical ADHD that people look for, you know, the hyperactive child in the classroom, throwing things, breaking things. And then you have other types of ADHD, which can be much more internalized, where it's disorganization, fidgeting, restless thoughts, acting on impulse. And each individual person will display their ADHD differently. With girls especially, as girls typically mature and socialise quicker, we become better at hiding those idiosyncrasies, therefore making it even harder to diagnose.
So Olivia, somebody suggested that you may have had that when you were a child, but you were not formally diagnosed. You weren't formally diagnosed till you were an adult. What tests do they do to figure that out?
Yes, that's correct. So it got brought up when I was a child for, you know, me fidgeting in school, finding it hard to concentrate. But because I was like well-mannered and bright, it kind of got a bit of brushed under the carpet. And it was only in my later life I found myself in a quite severe battle with anxiety and depression. And I came under the care of a psychiatrist whose actual special field was ADHD in adults. It was just actually a strike of luck. And she just was speaking to me for an hour, assessing me. And at the end of the hour, she said, "Has anyone ever spoken to you about having ADHD?" And I said, well, it was brought up as a child, but never really kind of a firm diagnosis.
Olivia, how has it affected your relationships later on now in life? Because, you know, you have spoke about being impulsive sometime and speaking and acting out without thinking. How has that translated in your relationships?
I think definitely through my teenage years and my early 20s, especially when it wasn't managed, it wasn't officially diagnosed. I think, yeah, like you say, acting without thinking, acting on impulse, you know, did definitely cause myself and probably people around me, you know, a lot of stress. And I think, you know, people sometimes describe ADHD as a state of being constantly overwhelmed. So I think having a partner, especially at a young age, you know, if they're probably think, calm down, what's the matter with you? What are you getting so stressed out for? It's not a big deal. But obviously in my head up here, it was all a big deal because my thoughts weren't, you know, in the correct order.
When you, excuse me, Olivia, when you were in the Love Island villa, which is the first time you came to sort of public prominence, was it a conscious decision that you made about not talking about this condition, or had you indeed been diagnosed by then?
So, yeah, I had been diagnosed previously to Love Island, and it was a really kind of oblivious thing where obviously the producers knew. I went through all my mental health checks, so it was on my record to my doctor, and it just kind of was something that, you know, because I'd never really heard anyone else speak about it. It was not something that I really brought up in my day-to-day conversations. I just kind of kept it to myself. And it only really came out, like, you know, by accident. I was on my stories one day. This is a couple of years post Love Island. And I just was doing my stories on Instagram. And I was like, oh, typical ADHD, blah, blah. And the next thing I knew, I had all these DMs from mostly young women and their mothers being like, oh my gosh, have you got ADHD? You've never shared this. And my daughter, you know, she got diagnosed a few days ago. She's been crying in her room saying she feels like she's a weirdo. And then I realised, gosh, this is actually really important. I wasn't intentionally hiding it, but I realised it's really important for me to talk about it.
And you're in a really good relationship now, Olivia, with Bradley. How does he deal with it?
So he's like, you know, the yin to my yang. He's completely, you know, neurotypical, very... very sort of calm, calm and laid back, and he's got to know me over the years. I'm still learning about my disorder as I get older, and I love educating myself on ADHD, and the studies around it, especially with women, are still massively. There's a long way to go with that. So it's like, as I learn more, I teach him, and he can see when I'm struggling, and he knows things that trigger me and things that help bring structure to my life.
Just saying there about Love Island, Olivia, and watching those clips. I'm so excited about Monday.
Yeah.
I wanted to say, so Megan Barton Hanson, who was, I think, the same year as you, she says, she said this today, if you want to win Love Island, go wild, play dirty, and have sex on telly. Didn't really do for her, did it? But there you go. But what do you think about that?
I don't think there'd be a correlation between that and winning. I do think if you want to be a rememberable character, then definitely go in, mix it up, have fun. In terms of the sex thing, I think that is such a personal thing. I think if you're comfortable and you meet someone and that feels right, go for it. If not, don't. I don't think there should be no pressure on this sex element. But I think in terms of, you go in there and have fun. It goes so quick, date people, tell them you like them, don't hold back, because it just goes like that.
Yeah, well, ITV2, 9 o'clock tonight, it all kicks off. I'm sure you'll be watching, Olivia. Listen, thanks so much for your honesty. We really do appreciate that. It's been really lovely speaking to you today.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
If you would like more information about ADHD, there's plenty of information on our website.